Good afternoon and welcome back to Collaboration Conversations. I'm your host, Regina Partain Bergman, CEO of Bridgeport Strategy. Once again, I have the wonderful pleasure of having an amazing co-host today, a guest co-host. Uh, Dionne is joining us. Dionne is the founder and CEO of Inside Sales by Design. I love that name, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Dionne, thank you so much for agreeing to be our co-host today and for bringing us these wonderful panelists today. I'm excited to learn about them in a moment. But first, I would love for you to tell our audience a little bit about your journey, what's brought you to this place in life, and
Yeah.
who you serve and why.
Gosh, well, thank you for that. And thank you for the platform, Regina, and being your co-host. You've been a delight to get to know over the last couple months that our paths have crossed. And man, my journey is like a lot of people, right? In the making, 25 years in the making. I just started reading a book called The Slash Career,
Ooh,
right? Where I thought there was something wrong with me, that I couldn't do just. And so I found this book in Brene Brown, one of her books, she mentioned it, and just having multiple passions and being able to meld them all together. So that is my journey, has been one of wanting to do a lot and serve people and bring people together and connect the dots. And I'm definitely more on the efficiency side and effective than I am pomp and circumstance, right? So we're getting ready to head out for the weekend, and my husband and my sister are literally sitting there swirling through finding restaurants in Phoenix. And I'm like, I'm so stressed out. I am so stressed out. I'm so stressed out because I don't know the decision making criteria or when it's going to be over.
right,
Right. It's terrible. And like, that's no reflection on them trying to do something good for us.
right,
But I'm like,
right.
ah. So my journey is that self discovery and where am I good and how does this work and what am I good at? And so really working to serve people and organizations of not cutting through that as far as cutting it off, but landing that proverbial plane. And so what we do is really put together programs and onboarding programs and client success programs that span the entire organization
Oh,
that give
nice.
people that grounding. And so we serve organizations in that way.
That's
So
awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. You made me think of something when I was years ago when my daughter was headed off to college. For some reason, my family thought I was the one that should make all the plans, right? You know, I should do the packing. Well, they found out quickly that if I packed for them, they got there with things they had wished they had packed. I said, fine, you pack it. I'll
Yeah.
pack my stuff, you pack yours. But the other challenge was so we take off cross country to take her to college. I didn't make hotel reservations anywhere. I, nobody else made hotel reservations anywhere.
That's amazing.
So, we get to this town and, are getting close. And my husband said, where are we staying? I said, I don't know. I didn't book anything. I'm that 30,000-foot person.
You and me both. You and me both. Not my circus, not my monkeys. I say that
There
a
you
lot
go.
in the
Yeah.
house. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I could totally relate.
Yeah, it's so funny. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. That has been a little bit of my journey, and I think we want to hear from
We
Shannon and
do.
Jessica
Yes,
now,
please. Would
right?
you have them do the same thing for us, please?
Absolutely. We'll go in alphabetical order. First name. So Jessica. See, and I just about got my alphabet wrong. So Jessica, thank you for joining us today. And same question for you, right? Like, tell us more about your journey and who you serve.
Sure. So my journey is, I knew that I wanted to be in innovation and in technology. When I graduated from undergrad many, many moons ago, I was not really in that space. So I went to grad school and knew I wanted to make a pivot in my career.
Mm.
So I went to Pepperdine, focused on new ventures and entrepreneurship, and really tried to dig in as much as possible into a totally new world. I got an opportunity to run the Startup Grind chapter in Orange
Mm.
County a couple of months after graduation, and said, okay, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to figure it out. And that really led me to the path of working with founders and being in this ecosystem of innovation and finding solutions to really hard problems. And that's how I ended up where I am today.
Awesome.
I love that. That is so amazing. Regina?
Yes, I just said that's awesome.
And it's
Love it.
it's fascinating when people say, I know I've always wanted to, right? And because I've never been that person. So how did you know that?
Well, for me, I come very much from a blue collar family. Growing up, my dad was, and he still is, he's a mechanic, and he, come home around the dinner table on Sunday nights, and he'd say, look at my hands, they're all bruised and they're full of grease. I don't want this for you and your brother. Go get an education. Go do something that you're passionate about. And so I've always had that mentality of, I'm going to find something that I love to do, and I'm not going to work just for a paycheck. I want to be passionate about what I do. Yeah. And I also want to be able to have more flexibility. My parents had to work all the time. Yeah. And so they weren't able to go see my basketball games or, go to award ceremonies and things of that nature. Yep. And this gives me that flexibility that I want and I really need as a mom, and also just to have my own balance in my life. And so, technology is really, like, I knew a long time ago, this is where I wanted to go because it was so fast paced, so new. I started working in AI before everybody started talking about AI. Yeah. And so, people are saying, oh, what is this AI? And I'm like, goodness sakes, it's like, this is old news. But, it's just different because I made a conscious effort to be in this space and learn as much as I could. And I think that's, kind of my early years kind of helped me, have that drive.
Yeah, that is amazing. And yeah, I come from a blue collar family as well. And we had a lot of that. And we had a lot of literally being locked out of the house during the summer and a lot of go figure it out, don't die. Right. And so it was more like relational components, which is funny in a way. So it's just, thank you for sharing your story. It's just very inspirational and heartwarming, right? None of us are alone in that, for sure.
Indeed.
Oh, so much to come back to. So much to come back to. Shannon, tell us your background and story on kind of where you've been and how you got here and who you serve.
So my undergraduate degree actually was in English literature because I really liked the concept, right? How do you dig into a problem and look for patterns? It just so happens that those patterns were in James Joyce or, so I was like, this is great. This is awesome. And I felt like it would be a really good pre-professional degree. But unlike Jessica, I was like, I don't know where the professional goes from here. And ended up in proposal writing in regulated industries. So first I was doing, really large partner proposals in the nuclear non-proliferation space, which was pretty wild. So the company I worked for had a software solution that worked really well in terms of looking for security on really high profile places that had plutonium, uranium. So I learned a lot about the operations of sales and then moved into the life sciences, also in a proposal management capacity. And the company that I worked for just went gangbusters. And so I built a sales operations team there that had folks in contracts, proposals, sales engineering, inside sales, sales process, salesforce.com. And that is an industry that is heavy for mergers and acquisitions. So sat down and got my MBA so I could figure out a few things. Then started working on my PhD, right? Exactly. My PhD in user adoption of sales technology. So at some point I realized there are just ways to think about the front end more. People who are in technology get so excited about the back end, but I really wanted to dig in on what makes somebody want to use technology. How do we use that diffusion of innovations theory to say, let's make technology humans actually want to use?
Yep.
So And during all of that, about 5 years ago, I started my own company, Cloud Adoption Solutions, which is focused on sales process and sales and how that transcribes itself to sales technology. So we work with companies that are in some sort of growth mode, acquisition mode, to say, let's take a pause and let's look and see what it is you actually want your technology to do.
Mm.
It's been really fun and interesting, playing psychologist via technology.
Wow.
There's a lot of therapy that goes on when you're in the tech and the consulting space, for sure. Um,
Definitely.
yes. So, Jessica, talk a little bit more because, again, there's so much talking about collaboration, right? Of collaboration and therapy. I have sometimes called myself a sales therapist, right? Because you've got folks that are in, Regina, like you're saying, like the strategy component, and you've got the folks that are down frontline doing stuff. And there's a big gap there,
Oh, yes.
right? And so, Jessica, when you were talking about, startups and the entrepreneur and wanting to be in that innovation economy, talk a little bit more, about what that looks like, right? Kind of like Shannon was saying, like there's this therapy component to it. And maybe it's just more asking questions, but, talking a little bit more about who you kind of serve and going deep.
Yeah. So, I Startup Grind is a community for entrepreneurs. There's chapters similar to mine all around the world, literally everywhere around the world. And we are here to help and support entrepreneurs. We know how it is as founders. I've founded a past company before, platform as a service. And it's hard, extremely hard to run your own business, especially one that is, you're starting from nothing and it's a technology-based company, or could be any type of based company. I also run an accelerator program in Los Angeles. It's called Braid Theory. We help startups that have an idea and actually want to go forward, and they have some stuff figured out, but don't quite know how to go to market, how to get commercialization. And that can be very much a therapy session with the founders, because I've been in their shoes. I know how it feels when you're constantly getting smacked around and you are just trying to both stay afloat with your burn rate as well as trying to innovate and potentially service customers, or really figuring out what is your product market fit. Do you have it?
Yeah.
So I can empathize a lot with what they're going through. And our company primarily works with engineering-led founders because they're missing the business component of it. And, as somebody with a business background, it's kind of where I really thrive. And being able to help them understand the business part of it, really opens their eyes, because they don't know what I take for granted, as an MBA. And I'm sure as like many of you in sales, they just don't understand that. That's not where they come from.
Right.
And so bridging that gap of knowledge, because they can be really technical and brilliant, but when it comes down to what we think is fundamental, they just miss it. And so helping them do that, and seeing where they came from and then where they are when they graduate is just a total 360.
I have a question for you too, Jessica. How do you collaborate with others to serve those companies?
Yeah,
because I'm assuming that you can't be the one stop of
absolutely
everything. So how do you collaborate
with synthetic biology companies? I am not a biology person at all. All of the science is just way over me. But I know certain things, right? But we have a lot of mentors. We have advisors. There's other people on staff that are experts in certain spaces. So we have check-ins with the founders, and we have office hours in order to make sure that we're giving them the support in all aspects. And it's not just for business. We also are part of other communities for an accelerator. So that way, if we need to lean on somebody outside of our organization, we have a network and able to help and collaborate in a larger way. When it comes to clean tech, which is where we are, and maritime, everything involves water, everything. So we're all, it's a really small community once you start knowing people.
Mm-hmm. I would
Mm.
imagine that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting too. And being able to bring those resources to bear is really helpful, right? And from a collaboration perspective. So I'd be curious, I'm going to ask Shannon, you the same question that Regina had asked Jessica. But then I think the second part of that is, what does it look like to collaborate in your space? And then maybe taking that a step further too, like if you're bringing in these folks, like Jessica, I know you mentioned when we talked earlier, you've got a program, right? And you have cohorts and stuff. And Shannon, you may or may not have that too, right? So like, what does it look like at a step one to start collaborating? And then how does that ripple out?
I think
Great
one of the
question.
things that we talk about a lot, Dionne, you and I talk
Yeah.
about this a lot, and I guarantee Regina and Jessica, you think about this all the time too, is that Stephen Covey role
Yeah.
of beginning with the end in mind.
Yes.
When you're
Yeah.
dealing with sales teams, first of all, everybody else wants to have their hands in on it, marketing, finance, operations, delivery, because so many things, sit on the balance of that. So you have to be collaborative and say, here's my reporting. This is what's in the pipeline. This is what's coming down your way to deliver. So there's that need to, be very open and honest about your sales results and your sales data. And that translates immediately to technology. And so a lot of times when you think about how do we capture what's necessary business data, not even to make data-driven decisions, because that's the sophisticated part, but to say we need integrations coming from all of these other areas. So, hey, sales, you better be really good friends with marketing, because if they pick a marketing automation system that doesn't speak nicely to your CRM, and then your CRM doesn't speak nicely to ERP, you're going to have friends on both sides of the contract signature in your organization that are not happy with you, and therefore your customer is not going to be serviced well too. So collaboration is of the utmost importance. And with this, extremely virtual hybrid world we have now, it puts even more pressure on technology.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And so where in all of that, right? So Jessica, you've got folks coming into your incubators and, Shannon, you're talking with people. Where do you even start that? Because I'm a big believer in start with the end in mind, right? So whether you're a startup or even some of the more established companies, you're like, the question is, what would you like to accomplish? And you literally get the deer in the headlights look, right?
Yeah.
And partially because it's really hard to articulate the vision in our head to words that come out of our mouth that everybody can understand. Right.
And
So,
sometimes it's just because we're so wrapped up in the day to day as well that we don't take time to step back and look at things strategically.
yeah. And do
Yeah.
that and then give ourselves some quiet time. Right. So, how do you
Absolutely.
start some of those conversations? And again, because to Regina, what Regina was saying is we're not out to insult anybody. Right. But to that point is I like being in my head. I freaking love it. I need like 4 hours a day of quiet time. I get like 4 minutes. So, and so everybody's like, Mom, why are you so stressed out? Dionne, are you okay? I'm like, no, no, I will be on Sunday. So,
Give me a few minutes.
yeah, just think, how do we kind of get that space? How do we start some of those conversations so we can articulate what does the end look like?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends. So for founders that are coming to us, and even ones that I see through Startup Grind, it's really comes down to like, well, what do you want? A lot of people don't know what they want.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want a lifestyle business where you run it and potentially give it to your family later? Do you want a high growth business and you want to be acquired by a larger business? Do you want to, be the CEO for this company forever? Or do you eventually want to pivot into another role? Like, what do you want? And what do your partners want? Because likely you have other partners. And do each of you have the same vision? If one wants to be a lifestyle business and the other one wants high growth, we need to find a way for you guys to be on the same page, because that path is totally different. Your decisions on a day-to-day for a business are going to be different based on what your end goal is.
Yeah.
And you have to have that conversation. And sometimes those conversations can be really uncomfortable. And it's necessary to have at a beginning formative type of business, because you don't want to be down the road 2 years later 4 years later and you and your founder are fully vested or almost vested into your business, and then all of a sudden somebody's doesn't want to go in the same direction and you need to make a different path. Somebody has to leave, somebody has to buy somebody else out. It becomes a huge mess if you don't fundamentally see where your business is going together at the beginning. Then you really have to take a time out and make sure that this is the right person you want to be with, because it's almost like a marriage. And you need to be able to go forward together, because if not, your business decisions are going to be really hard to make.
So coming back to that beginning with the end in mind is so critical, to have that discussion together as partners to make sure you are seeing the same end. But then there's always the growth that can occur in the in the stream, right? And that what we thought in the beginning is not where we are now.
Right.
And how you stay together during that process, during the growth, how you continue to be on the same page.
Yeah, that's interesting and tricky. And so it sounds, Jessica, and Shannon would love your take on it too, is number one, there's external collaboration conversations that happen, right? So Jessica and Shannon, if we're bringing advisors and mentors or whomever to the table, but then there's also the internal collaboration conversations that need to happen. And again, I always go back to articulation is hard, right? And then also adding that to different stages. Like we can't have one collaboration conversation at the start of a relationship. It has to be an ongoing thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Remember 20 years ago, it was amazing, Jessica.
Right. Yeah, I know it's something that my founders and I did for our company. Like we were all married, we all had young kids. Our kids are still young, but we had our internal meeting with the founding team, and then we had a meeting with our spouses. Because we were a startup, we knew what this was going to demand of our life, what kind of financial burden it could potentially put on the family, how much stretch we were going to go under, and making sure that our spouses knew that and that they kind of gave their blessing. Because the last thing you want to do is put too much pressure on your personal side, where then it strains your business side. And so that's something that I try to have our founders do now too. And people that I talk to, like, have you had this conversation with your spouse? Are they also on board? Do they know what this means? Because you don't want to go down a path and then you feel like you're really isolated, and being a founder can be really isolating. And you want to be able to have that support system outside of work as well as inside of work.
And some of us aren't seeing ahead that well. Kind of more driven, and you're just like on this path. When I started my staffing company many years ago, I had a business partner in it, and my husband worked out of town a lot. And I started this business while he was gone, And I can remember driving down the road and him going, I really wish you told me about this before you did this. I didn't even think about it. It's kind of like not making the hotel reservations, right? Just storming down the road.
We have those conversations in my house too a lot, where he's like, my husband's always like, when are you going to tell me these things? Like, oh, I just did.
I just did. Yeah.
And he just shakes his head and goes and gets a beer from the garage, so it's funny. So Shannon, sorry, Regina, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'll add it later. That's fine. Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, I think one of the keys to this critical type of collaboration is something that nobody likes to do, and that's documentation and memorialization, right? No one likes that part. But what's really nice about, having critically from the beginning a mission, vision, and value statement is it becomes your North Star.
Yes.
So when you're making a decision, if you see something attractive and you say, I want to go after that business, does it meet what we said in the beginning was going to be, our key core guiding principles? And folks who are entrepreneurs or who are, leaders of organizations, documentation is not their favorite part, but it's really critical to write it down so that you can refer back to it and say, does this meet what it is we're trying to do?
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
Going back to something Jessica had said a moment ago, made me think of also in the staffing firm, one of the things that we did a few years before we closed the doors, we were impacted negatively by the financial crash of 2008. I'll put it that way. Um, but we implemented the balanced scorecard in our business. I don't know if you ladies are familiar with that or not, but that was a really big piece and unifying piece. Brought all of our department heads in and went through that balanced scorecard together, did that work together. That was really powerful.
Yeah, that's very important. What were some of the big aha moments, Regina, when you did that? And then Shannon and Jessica, if you do something similar in your kind of cycles of communication, what are some of the big takeaways that you hear when you kind of go through those motions? So whether it's a balanced scorecard or some sort of
or
feedback.
whatever. Yeah. For me, I think that the big aha is just exactly what Shannon was just talking about. Having that strategic direction and all being on the same page, that you've created it together, and this becomes a living, breathing thing in your business and keeps you on track. So many times we get just buried in tactics and we forget about strategy. And the strategy is what keeps you on the path and allows you to achieve your goals. The tactics are just methodologies for doing that, but the strategy is where it all comes home to.
Yeah, that's a good point. Shannon, Jessica, thoughts?
We use the V2 mom, which is a really nice way to say, what are what's your vision, what's your values? And we always have SMART goals tied to it. It has to be measurable. So we do it, sort of at the overall company level, and then that feeds back down to everybody. And we do recalibrate, as the year goes on. I mean, Jessica mentioned how AI got really hot this year, and it did. It was like all of a sudden AI was the thing. So we went back and said, do we recalibrate? And everybody sort of looked at what their goals were, and we did a mid-year check-in. So, really capturing, and I think any sort of balanced scorecard is great, and anybody who's listening that doesn't use it, it's okay. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a system. Just start where you are, really.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just another tool. It's another tool
that
you can use to clarify. But I also love that you should recalibrate. I mean, you should at least look at it periodically throughout the year. Are we on target? What do we need to adjust? Is this still where we're going? How are we going to get there?
Yeah. Jessica, I agree.
Yeah. So for our organization, we also use SMART goals. And, everything has to be measurable, or else, how are we going to make sure that we are moving forward as a company and achieving our goals? So, and we do the same thing with our founders, helping them establish what those goals should be. How do you measure those things? Because again, a lot of them just don't understand, like, what's the point? This seems like just a academic exercise. Like, no, it's really more than that. You actually spending time to think about these things will help you in your business and how you operate it. Like, you may not have everything figured out, and you don't need to, but you need to have some things that are measurable and that you can point back to and say, okay, these are things that I've achieved within the last quarter. Did this work? Did it not work? Do I need to make a pivot? And do I need to focus on something else or double down on something?
Right.
So, all of those things you have to be able to measure and understand where you're spending your time, because otherwise you're going to end up in the weeds. We all end up in the weeds anyway, but like even more so if you're not tracking things on a regular.
Yeah. Just how far off the road we get, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I agree with you. I know Shannon and I have known each other for quite a while, and we do that too. Like when we work with organizations, we walk through and we create the purpose statement. I steer clear of mission statements because sometimes it gets people kind of weirded out, or it just has a weird connotation to it. So we always talk about, do you have a purpose statement? Do you have a team purpose statement, a personal, professional purpose statement? And then we do the same thing. So we always, whatever planning exercise you use, it's not one and done and it goes in your drawer until the annual review, because then you're off course, right?
That's right. Immediately
up on Jupiter. So to your point it's like a quarterly check-in. at the end of the day. So how formal do you all kind of get with, it sounds like, your quarterly or whatever check-ins? Is it super formal? Is it on the calendar? Right? What does that kind of look like?
So for our organization, it's just, that the first meeting of that quarter, we
Okay.
go through it. It's nothing too
Got it.
formal. There's not that many of us. So, it doesn't take a long time, or at least it shouldn't. And so, for the most part, it's pretty straightforward, unless there's like a true change in something that we need to refocus something, or we want to do something totally different, then that's a totally different strategy meeting in which things go more in depth and longer dialogues and conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Shannon, how about you? Your thoughts?
We definitely put it on the calendar, because if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
And
I'm the same way.
it's something that's really easy to push off, because you're not making money tangibly off of doing this, right? So we have it calendared. We work on company goals first, then departmental goals, then personal development goals. And
Good.
there is a template, that we follow, and it really does allow us to go back through and say, okay, so if you're building a business case because you'd like to attend this course or buy this additional tool, how does that feed into your goals, your department's goals, and the organizational goals? So it makes it really easy to make business decisions pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah, that's
Love
one of the
that.
things we talk about too, is process bleeds out emotion. And
I like that. I've not heard that.
process bleeds out emotion, right? Because how many times have we all asked somebody, okay, how are you going to make that decision? And again, you kind of get that deer in the headlights look.
Right.
And we don't know. We can't always articulate our what or why or how we are going to make a decision. And so that's kind of the other discipline muscle that needs to be built. And so I think the more you do that annual planning, and it's such a good exercise, because I think it brings all of that in together, right? And I think of collaboration too, as far as how are we going to make decisions together?
Yeah.
Right. So I see everybody nodding. So tell me first thoughts going through your head.
Well, if we don't have the foundation right of like where we think we want to go, those conversations can be really difficult, because you're not aligned. And misalignment is probably one of the biggest things that I see with early stage companies and their founding team, where it starts to fracture. Yeah. And when they are having success, you can really see the fracture coming out. And then you start seeing high turnover. You see customers going away because of the turnover, and like a whole mess of problems then happen. And so, it comes back again to like, what is your end goal? Like, what do you want? Because without that, everything else is just not going to align properly.
Yeah.
We see this all of the time with our customers. When you build a Gantt chart and you have a lot of room in there for decision making, and they're like, listen, we're going to get this major thing done in 6 months. And we're like, no, you're not. And they're like, yes, we are. And, people are so optimistic about their ability to collaborate as an organization and make decisions that have long lasting impact and are costly in time and money to take back. And, that's one of those things where it's clear, you can tell right away when organizations are very tight about documenting and deciding what their organizational decisions are, and how they make decisions based on what their purpose is, because those are the ones that take forever to implement any new change or process or technology.
100%. I hear you, Shannon. People tell me that too. They go, oh no, we're good. We can make decisions. And I go, okay. So tell me the last time either you and your friends or you and your family were going to go out to eat. How long did it take you to decide on where to go out to eat? And they go, oh, that's why we're going to document this. Regina, how about you? Your thoughts when we start talking about some of this?
Yeah. So one of the things that was running through my head as we're having this part of the conversation is that some of the folks who are listening to us don't have a team yet. Can we talk about how important it is for them to do this same process?
Yeah.
That just because they don't have, you can be a team of one and still do this process.
Yeah.
Right?
That is so good, Regina, to bring up, because there's, no such thing as over processing. And a lot of times it's just saying, so how do I do it? How do I send an invoice in QuickBooks? Write it down, write it on a Google
Yeah.
sheet. It doesn't have to be formal. You don't have to get a
Right.
big fancy sort of knowledge base, but as you do it, write it down, because maybe you want to take a vacation day as a team of one, and you can have your best friend, sister, former coworker babysit those invoices for you while
Yeah.
you take a 4-hour off.
I love it.
Yeah. And Shannon, too, a lot of times too, we will have people put it up in Google Sheets or whatever, but we'll say, just as you're going and doing one invoice, record yourself.
That's it.
Record it on
Yeah.
Teams,
Yeah.
Zoom, Loom, Vidyard,
whatever.
doesn't
Yeah.
matter. You can
That's
do
a
a
great
video,
idea.
you can do documentation, right? Zoom is nice. I don't know if I think Teams does it now too, or if you do a video, it auto gens a transcription, right? So there's 1,000 ways to make documentation a lot easier, because I think that's the thing too. So my uncle was, he was brilliant. He was a part of Mensa, and he was in the military, but he wrote the training manuals and operating manuals for nuclear reactors.
Oh, wow.
It was really hard to talk with him.
Okay.
So, but smart, right? And so that's
Yeah.
to Shannon, to your point, like, we're not asking you to write this instruction manual. So to your point, call out and be deliberate with a week that says, for this week, every time I do a process, I'm going to record it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
here's my process to record it.
It's the only way a founder can move into being a founder-led organization, because otherwise you get so stuck, working in the business instead of working on the business, because you have nothing documented to hand off when you're ready.
100%.
And you do not have a business you can sell when it's time to exit. Yeah. What about the strategy portion? You mentioned the process portion. How important is it for that solopreneur to have those strategy meetings with themselves?
Very. Jessica, how do you kind of work that with your folks coming in?
Yeah. So, if you don't take time to sit down and write it out, if that's writing on a piece of paper or writing on a whiteboard, like, okay, where am I going? What do I want? How am I going to get there? What do I need to do in order to get there? Who do I need to connect to? Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And if you're just trying to wing it, you're never going to get there. You can't. You can't just wing these type of things. You actually have to put some thought behind it and plan these things out and really have an understanding of, okay, what is my overall strategy and what are the tactics I'm going to take in order to do that? And do I have even the team in order to do it? Do I need to hire an outside agency to help me do it? Like, what do I need?
Yep.
And if you don't put that time, which I think a lot of times we don't, as a single founder, I see it a lot. You just don't take the time to do that because you're trying to wear too many hats. And when you really should just pause and take like 2 days and say, I'm just going to lock myself in this office and I am going to work on my business and not work in my business. Yeah. Because otherwise you're just going to keep on chasing your tail.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I do is I don't have a lot of space on my walls left in my office. I have so many bookcases in here and office stuff. So what I do is I go to the library and they have these little rooms for people, little study rooms. And I take my big flip chart and my markers and my computer and I go to the library and book out several hours spending time in there, and I wallpaper the room with my flip charts, and each flip chart has some aspect of my business on it, and I lay out that strategic plan and then bring it back and put it all into place. But do that. Ideally, we should be doing that probably at least twice a year, if not 4.
Yeah, I think quarterly. And I think, Regina, to that point too, do you think about, you made some really good comments as far as, one, we want to have a business that's repeatable and scalable, and we all know
exactly.
That. Right? So and then folks listening to us. Number one. Number two is, if the goal of the business is to sell it, even a part of it, we have to have those SOPs. We have to be able to hand off the business.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then
it has to be profitable.
Yeah, that's the other half of the coin, right? It's actually
The other half has
Mhm.
to be profitable.
just a skosh, just
Just a
a
skosh.
little, right? And I think final question. Now we're gonna come up here and we want to do some wrap up here in the next little bit. What do we think about when we think about collaboration? There's a lot of questions that are going to come into this, right? But when we think about collaboration, what does it look like if you're a founder, a small business, even big business, doesn't matter. What does it look like to work with your advisory board, right? Whether it's formal, informal, right? Your tribe, the people that can tell you no and you're not going to get mad and you're going to listen to them, right? That's an
Yeah.
advisory board to me.
Yeah.
Again, formal or informal, like it sounds like a lot of what we're talking about is a foundation for that. But what does it look like to truly collaborate with that advisory board, right? So Regina, like bringing in
Yeah.
your wallpaper,
My
right?
wallpaper.
Your SOPs, right, Shannon, that
Yeah.
we're talking about, or Jessica, like the conversations you're having of like, hey, we're in for a wild ride. Is everybody on board? But thoughts on what that looks like to collaborate with an advisory board.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I was not going to hang up with this call without mentioning there needs to be accountability, right? We can't just have collaboration. There has
Yeah.
to be a feedback loop
Yeah.
where, you have some accountability and there has to be, some manifestation of somebody that you answer to. So
Yeah.
that can be informal, like a personal board of advisors, or it can be, more formal, like a business coach scenario. Ideally, it's both. You should have people you call up and say, I just had this really great idea. Will you listen to me? And, they say, okay, let's talk about it. Do you have a business case? And then you should have a business coach who can evaluate what it is you come up with when you get through that sort of, exercise. And so
I love that.
yes, there has to be accountability in here.
There has to, and unfortunately for most entrepreneurs, the accountability is the banker when he tells you you're overdrawn.
Unfortunately,
money.
No.
Yeah. Jessica, your thoughts?
Yeah.
On
So our office hours, a lot of times, is that accountability for the founders in our program. And when I'm out networking or when somebody comes to one of our startup grind events and they run their idea by me or hey, what do you think about this? And I tell everybody who we work with beforehand, like I can be really frank. Please don't take offense to it. I am telling you because I care. And if I didn't care, I wouldn't tell you. So, sorry, that was a bad idea. No, you shouldn't be doing this. That's not the great use of your funds, whatever it is. Or like, yeah, that's great. Go do that. And this is who we think you should talk to in order to get that done. But you will, I'm sure you've ladies ran into this, is like you say that and like I just told you this information about me and how I operate. But people then go like, whoa, like that's really like, that was aggressive. I'm like, I'm not trying to be aggressive. I am trying to tell you that I've been in your shoes before. And if you think that at this pre-seed stage, for a lot of our companies are pre-seed, that you want to give up a board position to an angel investor, you are absolutely out of your mind.
Yeah.
That is, you are way too early of stage. If they want to be a advisory board member, that's fine. But to sit on the board of your company at this early of stage for the amount of money that they are giving you, that is a big no. And they're like, well, I really need the money. Not that bad, you don't, because you're eventually going to lose your business.
Yeah. A
and
decision or regret.
Right. If you want to run this business for the next 5 years, you need to make hard decisions. And sometimes that hard decision is saying no to quick money.
Yeah.
And also, being accountable, like, and to each other. Like if I say I'm going to do something and I don't do it, please call me out on it. Like, I know I have a lot of stuff on my plate, but if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I expect the same thing from somebody else too. And that's just how I operate as a person. But I think, people underestimate like, oh, well, I'll get to it eventually. Like that's not good professionalism in my viewpoint of how we should operate.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Someday is no day.
Someday is no day.
Yeah.
Ladies, this has been wonderful. Dionne, you have been a marvelous co-host. Questions that you've asked have just been wonderful. Appreciate it. And ladies, you've done such a great job of keeping this conversation going and helping us understand more of how we can collaborate. We are, however, out of time. And so we're going to turn the time over to Dionne for our wrap-up round, where each of you will share your final thoughts on collaboration and your contact information. And if you'll put your contact information into the private chat, oh, you've already done all of that. I will post that into the comments while you're doing this wrap-up round. Okay.
All right. Shannon, kick us off. We'll reverse order our panelists in alpha order now that I know my alphabet. Shannon.
I love it. I love it. Well, I would say, collaboration is something that has to be distinct and purposeful. It should be captured and documented. And it should be something that you do get on the calendar to review the way that you've thought about it, and making sure that you're thinking about all of the ways that you have those bidirectional feedback loops, so that you've captured all of the people that you need to internally, externally, in your personal board of directors, or in a formal arrangement with a business coach.
Yeah.
Love it.
That was really good. You're a good active listener.
I don't know how to follow that. I mean, she said it all.
You're going to do amazing. You're going to do amazing, Jessica. We believe in you.
If you're looking at this like as a founder, make sure that you are holding yourself accountable in all of your collaborations, and making sure that you are meeting those goals that you set forward, and get feedback on those goals. Are they really goals that you can actually obtain in the next 6 months? Because anything further than that, are you really going to be able to hone in on them and give them as much attention as you need to? So be open to the criticism, and be mindful that you are in a learning process, and you should always try to learn new things. So collaboration is a lifetime goal, and you need to always be open for whatever type of collaboration it is. Even if it's short term, it's always a learning experience.
Yeah, there's some really good nuggets in there too, Jessica, right? And I think the aha moment for me when you were talking about, and this was from our conversation before too, is what is the time horizon, right? Anything longer than 6 months should not be in pen, right? And so that's kind of an old school expression, right? So my grandfather when he would say something that was a good idea, he's like, I'm going to write that in pen, right? Before erasable pens came along. And so I think that's the thing, is like, don't commit to something. Don't put your poker chips behind something that is too far out, because you just don't know, and you're overextended. So I think that's really good. I like the conversation we had today, because I love the idea of collaboration. I think it looks different for different people. I also think, though, it's almost like a middle piece. And the first part is, like we talked about, you have to be able to articulate the what, the why, the who, the purpose. Then there's this collaboration motion, and then there's this accountability loop. It's almost like a 3-legged stool, right? At the end of the day. So I only have 2 fists, but 3-legged stool. And being able to kind of go down that path and, get the help you need. So whether it's a business coach, right? And that's what we do is business coaching, as well as we work with organizations that are making that shift. And like Shannon, like you were saying, there's so many times there's nothing documented. And Regina, like you were saying, is like, you can't sell your business if that's your goal without this. You can't scale. You can't. Right. So I think of that beginning, middle, and end of have the why, the what, the how, the purpose, walk through the collaboration motions, and then have those accountability loops at the end of the day.
Love it.
Yeah, this has been great to help me articulate those as well. Regina.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, ladies. I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you a bit today. And Dionne, thank you again for not only bringing such wonderful guests, but co-hosting and truly taking on that role and guiding this discussion in so many ways. Thank you so very much. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you.
And with that, folks, we will see you next time on Collaboration Conversations. Bye for